Football and politics. These are two topics that your father would have warned you to not bring up on dinner table conversations. Now we've already seen what politics has done to Indian households. It has fractured a lot of intimate relationships. The way I look at my relatives and some of my cousins after knowing their politics has completely changed. Similarly, when football fans interact with each other, sometimes I've seen them get very petty and sometimes downright obnoxious. I had heard a rumor that in Turkey, in public spaces, you're not allowed to speak about football. It's only when I read up more on it, I realized that a lot of public disorder gets created every time football is discussed amongst fans. Sometimes there are racial slurs, sometimes people get very aggressive. So, to contain that, they have some rules against public disorder, not particularly football. But this gives you a glimpse into every time football and politics is discussed. So today I have decided to mix two of my favorite topics, which is football and politics, and talk to you about every time football got political. Now I feel that politics was always a part of football, but currently it has reached a point where it is very hard to ignore, a lot of times inspiring, sometimes it is performative, and sometimes it is very messy. We're going to begin with one of my favorites, Pep Guardiola. Unarguably the greatest football manager, famous for being animated and freaking amazing. He must be lecturing his team on false nines and tactical triangles, but recently he took a stand on Palestine. Now he's spoken about it in the past also, but currently in the mainstream, when there is such less voice talking about the genocide that's happening in Gaza, somebody as powerful and famous as him speaking about it means something. Recently, when he got an honorary degree, this is the speech he gave.
It's so painful what we see in Gaza. It hurts me all my body. And let me be clear, it's not about ideology. It's not about I'm right and you're wrong. Come on. It's just about the love of life, about the care of your neighbor. Maybe we think that we see the boys and girls of 4 years old being killed for a bomb or being killed at the hospital because it's not hospital anymore. It's not our business. Yeah, fine. We can think about that. It's not our business. But be careful. The next one will be ours. The next 4, 5 years old kids will be ours.
I'm going to show you a video of Pep Guardiola after a tournament shaking hands with all the officials. Now he shakes hands with everyone until he comes across an Israeli official. He turns around, avoids the person, and also makes sure that he stands in a way where his team, which was following him, also doesn't shake hands with this Israeli official. Pep Guardiola isn't the only one. PSG fans carried out pro-Gaza displays all throughout the games last season, whether it was in form of a tifo, their banners, or their chants. They showed their solidarity properly. Now, some people wanted to slap fines against the club because they thought that all of this display was very politically provocative, but finally, the Champions League committee decided against it. Now we're going to discuss my all-time favorite football statistics. It's the phenomena of the Mo Salah effect. Now Mohamed Salah, this Muslim footballer from Egypt, goes and joins the club Liverpool. Liverpool has had a past of hate crimes against Muslims. Now this devout-looking Muslim player goes and joins their club. Stanford University and UCLA had conducted a research and they found a 16% drop in hate crimes against Muslims ever since Mohamed Salah has gone and joined the club. There is also a considerable amount of reduction in anti-Islamic posts online by Liverpool fans. So Mo Salah effect essentially means that when you're positively exposed to a certain religion or a community, your biases and prejudices reduce. In fact, your empathy increases towards that community, and that's what Mohamed Salah's presence has done. This goes on to show us that how important representation is. When people from different communities and religion get represented in mainstream clubs, things do change. Now, while we are on Mohamed Salah's topic, I would also like to talk about Egypt. Now, Egypt has had a past of dictatorship which was overthrown by a revolution by the people of the country. Then came a democratically elected government. Over a period of time, there's growing resentment towards this government because of human rights violations and corruptions. Now, this growing resentment against the government has increased the sadness levels of the people of Egypt if looked at from a sociological perspective. Now, they fought for a revolution, they wanted a change, and the change came in form of a corrupt government that has left the entire population disillusioned. Now comes this national hero called Mohammed Salah, who goes on to become an international hero for the people of Egypt. And suddenly, there's a rise in the happiness index of Egypt. And it's so much so that in 2018 Egypt elections, when people were supposed to vote for either of the parties, the millions and millions of ballots were destroyed because they crossed out both the names and they wrote Mohammed Salah's name as the next president of Egypt. During COVID, Boris Johnson's government came up with a free meal plan for children who came from lower income groups, and this plan was only supposed to extend for a term. Now, Marcus Rashford, this footballer who was 22 years old then and was a part of Manchester United, found out about this. He grew up in a poor family and he was always surrounded by food insecurity. He realized the power of this plan and he wanted the government to extend it beyond its term as well. Now, this is where they came at loggerheads and fought, and Marcus Rashford wrote open letters, urged all the MPs, and started this revolution on Twitter where he was able to make the government take a U-turn on their policy, and this meal plan was extended for all the children beyond the terms as well. This was a 170 million fund that the government allocated after Marcus Rashford fought for it. So this shows that the power that footballers hold, and if they are really persistent, they can change public policy also in their favor. Let's now talk about Mesut Ozil, this German footballer who used to play as a midfielder in Arsenal. He spoke extensively against the persecution of Uyghur Muslims in China. Now, China reacted in a manner by saying that his information was completely based on fake news. Now, Mesut knew what he was getting into. His team and his club had warned him against posting such things on the internet. But he was watching so many documentaries and was completely disturbed by the condition of Uyghur Muslims in China, where they were being forced in concentration camps and were forced for conversion. And there was a complete blackout of information that was leaving China. So instead of the warnings, he went ahead and posted what he felt. What followed were consequences severe for Arsenal. Their jerseys were burnt on the streets. The people of China came out in protest of the player and the team. There was a blackout and the broadcast of Arsenal matches in China. But he didn't care for any of this and he continued to speak about the people and their condition in China. Arsenal quickly distanced themselves from Mesut Ozil's opinions. They said that as a club, they are completely apolitical and they don't want to have any affiliation towards any ideology. They posted this on their official account. Now, interestingly, they were recently sued by an ex-kitman who was a part of their staff, Mark Bonnick, who was removed from the club because he posted pro-Palestinian tweets online, and he feels that because of his ideology, he was sacked. While this is all going on, there was a player called Thomas Partey in the club who had 5 accounts of rape against him. And interestingly, there is information that says that Arsenal as a club was aware of these cases against him and still kept him in the club. This goes on to show that sometimes clubs can be so hypocritical, because here is a sex offender who has been charged with rape officially and he still becomes a part of your squad and is in your team, and there are players who are emotionally feeling towards a political cause, and when they express their ideology, the club wants to distance themselves instantly. The US national women's football team has embraced politics head on. Megan Rapinoe, who also happens to be my all-time favorite football player, was the captain of this team and she won several accolades for the country. So when she was invited to the White House, she refused to go. She, along with a lot of team members, have extensively spoken about their sexuality, and Trump's government anti-LGBTQI stand didn't go well with them. So they made headlines when they refused to receive any accolades from the White House and to meet Trump. She has this amazing speech. This is like even before I got into football, this is the speech that I've heard on loop, where she's talking after a victory and she's so cool in her stance, the things that she's saying. You will absolutely fall in love with this team if you haven't heard the speech before.
First and foremost, my teammates. Just shout out to the teammates. Just everybody. Give them a clap. This group is so resilient, is so tough, has such a sense of humor. It's just so badass. Like, there's nothing that can phase this group. We're chilling. We got tea sipping. We got celebrations. We have pink hair and purple hair. We have tattoos and dreadlocks. We got white girls and black girls and everything in between. Straight girls and gay girls. Hey!
Now we come to the Football World Cup of 2022, which happened in Qatar. Now, Qatar as a country officially criminalizes homosexuality. So there were some players who wanted to revolt against it. So they wanted to wear these rainbow armbands. But FIFA officially banned the wearing of these bands. There were people who wanted to carry flags and banners, but all of it was removed. On the surface, when we watched it on TV, it was made to look like that everybody was in agreement to this venue, but there was a lot of undercurrent of revolt and none of it was shown to us. So here's a reality check. While queerness is visible and celebrated in women's football, in men's football there's complete silence. Josh Cavallo happens to be the only mainstream upper league successful football player who plays for Adelaide United, which is an Australian league, to come out as gay. And other than him, there are no players who have been able to talk about their sexuality. While football has come a long way, this kind of absence and erasure of homosexuality from the sport goes on to tell us that there's still a long way to go. In Iran, women have been banned from football stadiums, because of which they're not able to watch the sport live. Now, Iran as a country has a very rich football culture, and there are a lot of women fans who watch the sport, appreciate it. In fact, they play it also, but when it comes to going to the stadiums in public spaces, they are not allowed. There was a lot of protest and international pressure, after which FIFA forced Iran to let women come into the stadiums, and finally it was allowed. But it was only symbolic. Overall, still women have to face a lot of backlash and they're not able to go to the stadiums and watch these matches live. A very interesting recommendation I would want to give here is this Jafar Panahi film called Offside. This was the first football film I ever watched. It's about these women who want to watch the World Cup qualifying match, and they dress up as men, they cut their hair short, and they want to really get into the stadium. And the stakes are way too high because people are very aggressive against women in public spaces. So they try to enter the football stadium for the match, and a bunch of them are caught and kept captive on the side very next to the stadium, and they hear the whole World Cup qualifying match next to them, but they're not allowed to watch. It makes for a very interesting look into Iranian politics and how people at different levels are empathetic but still are not able to go against the government when their stand against women comes. Please check out the film if you've not watched it. While we're talking about Iran, during the 2022 World Cup, in the stadium when the national anthem played, the Iranian footballers refused to sing it. This was in direct protest against the government after Mahsa Amini's death. Mahsa Amini was the student who was arrested when she didn't wear a hijab, and then suspiciously she died. When the players were taking this stand, they very well knew that the danger that they were going to face or their families back home were at the risk of, and they still took this stand. Speaking of world politics bleeding into football, when Russia attacked Ukraine, UEFA and FIFA came together and did a complete ban on Russian players from participating in the leagues. Chelsea had a Russian owner and he was removed from the ownership. The national football team of Russia was removed by FIFA. This is the strongest stand football has taken against any country in decades. But it makes me wonder, there is another country which has been declared as a war criminal in international courts. They are committing a genocide for so long, and yet the football community cannot come together and take a stand, whereas Russia became a very obvious, easy target. Now let's talk about the biggest football rivalry, which is between Barcelona and Madrid. That also has its roots in politics. Now, Barcelona comes in the Catalonian region, whereas Madrid is the capital of Spain. And Catalonia and Spain have been fighting against each other, where Catalonia wants a separate identity, they have their own language, and they want their own statehood. That political rivalry seeps into football as well, and that is why there is such severe hatred between these two clubs, because these are two communities actually fighting. So when the players wear these boots and they fight against each other, it is almost their political identity at loggerheads. So yeah, people love to say that keep politics out of football, but you know what? Politics has always been a part of the sport. Whether it's Pep's speech, PSG fans, Mohamed Salah's identity, or Cavallo coming out, or Iranian players protesting, football and politics have always gone hand in hand. But you know what the truth is? That the world is changing, things are updating, but it seems like football is always playing catch up. Because till the time male players are not feeling comfortable enough to come out and talk about their sexuality, we still have a long way to go.
Everyone see his own house. The neighbor. Look what happened today all around the world. Listen, what happened all around the world, and we are sitting here, don't do anything. Anything. It's here around the corner. And one day it will come there. You know? It's full of injustice in all around the world. And we are sitting, everyone looking himself.
10. This is Kanishka, Desi Villain. Please write to me in the comment section if there is a political football moment that I missed out on and is very dear to your heart. Also write to me if you feel that footballers should concentrate on the sport and not care about politics. If you like the content that I've been posting on this channel and you've not subscribed to my channel, please go and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye.